Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. If you have joined us, a very big welcome, and thank you for staying with us. We are talking about London's housing crisis this evening, and for those who's been watching the program will know that our panel of guests have been contributing. If you have any questions or if you want to know anything about London's housing crisis, there should be a number on the screen. The number is 0203 397 4740. You can phone in and participate in the program. It's a free line number, so you won't be charged anything. Before we went on break, we were talking to Christopher Worrell. I am now going to go over to Adam Allnott. Adam, in the UK alone, there are about 4 million shortfall of housing. What is the government doing to resolve it, and would we ever be able to resolve this housing crisis in the UK?
Well, if we are to resolve it, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort and a lot of skills which aren't quite to the level that we would need in this country. We spoke about it earlier and we touched on it earlier. When the UK was building the most amount of homes, it was when councils had the ability to actually build on their own land. And so now we need to go back to talking about councils and local authorities building houses again. There was, under Thatcher, in the right to buy and the reforms she made of the state, she also constrained local authorities and constrained local government on its ability to build housing, because it put a borrowing cap on their assets. It made sure that they sold off their housing stock, so either they had to do stock transfers to housing associations, or they'd just have it stripped away from their boroughs, and then the money would then go to the coffers of central government rather than the local authorities to build new housing. This Conservative government, one thing they have done is they've promised and they've laid down that they're going to raise that borrowing cap. In Camden, good example, if you were to raise the borrowing cap in Camden by 5% on the local authorities' assets, you would release £125 million of debt, which was at 1% to invest in social housing. That is a lot of money which a council can use to go and invest in what can be the next generation of council homes, which can actually be put at affordable rents. And then we could follow great examples that we're seeing in Hackney, for example, because Hackney is one of the few boroughs which, because they've been so well run, you know, credit to Phil Glanville and the work he's been doing. He was lead for housing before he became mayor. They've actually got inside the council property designers, you know, people, architects, and they've got investment managers, and they've got people who will go around and they identify places to build, and they create their own council homes, and they do it in a manner which is efficient, which is well run, but they can't scale up because they don't have the access to cheap debt that they would have if the borrowing cap was lifted.
Sure.
And just I'm going to pitch on with another problem which is notable, which comes from councils not having the ability to build on their own land affordable housing, because now at the moment you're seeing these large, very, very high value buildings being put up all around London, which squeeze out much of the communities.
Every bit of land seems to be like a gold dust, and they're building everywhere all over London.
Yeah,
but sadly, those homes are not for local people.
No.
They're more for private investors. People from all over the world are investing in homes over here, most of which tends to stay empty.
Oh yeah. So
all the way through the year.
I'm sure Chris can correct me on this, but if you have 100% of a development, if you've got a good local authority which can negotiate well in the with planning regs, only 30% of that will be classed as affordable, and that's not really, a lot of that's not really affordable, because some of it's going to be part buy, part rent, which, you know, not many people have access to. You got 10 grand in the bank to put down as a deposit. I don't, you know. And then you got some of it which will be housing association. Affordable rents. And then you've got maybe a third, so 10% of the whole development, which will go towards actual social housing, and that's if you're lucky. If you're lucky.
So those people that are on the waiting list,
no chance.
Haven't got a chance.
Whereas if you give councils the ability to,
and that includes big families as well as young people as well.
Big families, young families, you name it. You know, but then you retired people as well. Even young professionals can barely afford to live. I know most of my friends spend over half their income on just their house. Like, how are they meant
Let
to
me
live?
ask Chris to come in, because obviously he's an investment manager as well as a chair of a resident association. On the point that Adam just made about 70% of those new development are for private investors. 30% out of that, you'd be lucky if you get some for social housing. What's your views on that, and how true is this?
Well, I think it is a fact that there are difficulties in providing, for a market-based approach, affordable housing at social rent levels, and the reason for that is due to the cost of the product. So if it costs 100 and it's only worth 50, for a private sector to do that, the economics don't work. So there needs a gap to be funded. So that's the old adage.
Sure.
Subsidised housing needs subsidy. And in answer to your question, a few things that could be done is scrap these financial viability assessments. A lot of these developments that have been pushing through the lower rates, so they might go in, get 35%, which is great, accepted, and then go into BAT down the line, pushing it lower. There are obviously some reasons why some sites cannot provide 30%. There might be specific site economic reasons, like complex groundworks.
You might provide like a GP surgery
Exactly.
or a school.
Contamination,
or,
exactly. So, but if that was scrapped, the financial viability assessments and the rate of affordable housing that must be delivered is just set at, say, 20 or 30%, which really the market will then adjust the land prices.
Right.
Because the expectations of those landholders will be changed, because they know that the buyer is going to be putting that number in his model. Secondly, there are other ways in which market can be incentivised to provide more affordable housing at social rent levels, and that's through something called a low-income housing tax credit. And this is how they subsidise affordable housing in the United States. It's not very well known, but essentially what they do is, if you had a £10 million affordable housing development, and I was a developer, and I was going to yourself or at the council, I would show you this development for £10 million. And HM Treasury may have given you a bucket of tax relief to distribute on a competitive basis. So I may have this site and Asra may have that site, and we would go to the council going, I'd like £10 million of subsidy, please. I win the job. I've now got £10 million of a tax relief. I cannot pay my builders, cannot pay my designers, so what do? I would go to an investment bank who is friends with the likes of your Google, your Amazon, your Starbucks, who want to reduce their tax base in a corporately responsible way, socially responsible way. So if I now got this £10 million, I've sold it via an investment bank, how much is Starbucks going to pay? 70p in the pound, 90p in the pound? Because they've just made, if you've got a £100 million tax bill and you've just spent 7 million, you've got £10 million of a tax relief, you've made £3 million. But now that feeds back to me, the developer. I've now got £7 million or £9 million for a £10 million development, for example, easy maths. I've only got to borrow £1 million, so that means I can do lower rents. Right. And that's how it works in America. They built 3 million homes in 20 years.
Right. Can they adopt a similar concept here in Great Britain?
There's no reason why they can't. I think previous governments, it was looked at under Labour government with Ed Balls and Gordon Brown, but at the time they were quite happy with grant subsidy. And to be fair, the last Labour government was delivering enough affordable housing to keep up with need, maybe not catch up the whole of the backlog. So it was favoured. My personal opinion is councils should be able to build, for those in most need. So the homeless, the specialist services like for the domestic violence and these, as well as social council housing where and when their land permits. But this could also allow the private sector to deliver and support the way in which non-profits can also develop it, because it plugs that gap.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Azra, what are your thoughts on this?
In addition to what Chris and Adam has said, I think one of the other factors which can be looked at is reducing the waiting time on the waiting list for the families. Because
what's the current average waiting time nowadays?
there is no set average current waiting time. When you call them up, they say that, okay, it might take 1 year, 2 years, but it always takes more than 3, 4, 5 years. And sometimes it's, you know, you never know, it may take 6 years as well. I can give you an example of one of my friends in my neighborhood who I think has applied in 2011 and then got the house in 2018. And they have been living in a single bedroom with 2 children. So there is no set time.
7 years, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So when they initially contacted, they were told that it will take 1 year, and you know, and after that it has been just 1 year, you know, and then they were just adding the number of years. So there is no definite time period as to when you would get it, and then no one has the answer for that, sadly.
Sure,
And
sure.
it is a sad state of affairs.
Sure.
But I totally agree with what Adam and Chris were saying, that there's a 30% and 70%. This ratio needs to be increased.
Right, and you need,
Yeah.
okay, so it
Yes,
needs to be
yes.
revisited, right? Okay, thank you for that. Let me now go to Charlotte. Charlotte, you've said earlier on, and I'm going to slightly divert you now,
Okay.
that 28% of firms in London
Yep.
said that their employees had to leave the job because they simply could not afford the rent.
Mhm.
Hence, they had to give up their job and move out of London.
Mhm.
The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan,
Mhm.
wants to build 65,000 homes per year. Is this possible?
I mean, anything is possible if you've got the will.
If the will is there, yes, of
Yeah.
course. Of
So,
course.
I mean, I think I really would follow on to what everyone has said. Not when it comes to developments, though, not just increasing the amount that has to be affordable housing, but making it a direct condition that you need to build that affordable bit first. Because what is frequently happening is people build the expensive bits and then they say, oh, sorry, we ran out of money. We didn't get round to doing that. I think it needs to go first. Also, whilst I agree with what everyone has said, I think there's a big problem with the way we actually talk about housing. When social housing was first brought in, it was seen that, you know, people had a basic right to have a house over their head. And I really
That
think
still is the case, isn't it?
it really is, but I mean, the way we talk about housing, we talk about, you know, building and investment, da, 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 da. If I said 210,000 children in the UK have no access to clean water, there'd be rioting in the street. But 210,000 children in the UK don't have a house, and MPs are debating about investment and borrowing and debt, and these things are really important, and we do need to hone down and understand them.
Of course.
But we need to start from a point that housing is a basic human right. And I really would challenge anyone, particularly if you've got a Tory MP, if they are voting down allowing councils to build more houses, or they're voting down landlord rights, contact them, ask them how many properties they own and how many they rent out, because to a lot of MPs, to them, a house is something they've got a few of that they buy and sell. They've never in their lives thought, if I lose this house, I might lose a roof over my head. They worry, if the market goes down, my asset doesn't mean as much, isn't worth as much. For some people, fluctuating markets means whether they've got somewhere safe to put their head down. And I don't think that we're having the debate in those terms. I think for too long, housing has only been debated as assets. That even all of the points Chris has put forward tonight are really great, and it's really great we have him here understanding. But it is sad that that's the only way we can actually get people to listen, by talking about it in investment terms rather than saying just build houses.
Sure. But I mean, in terms of Sadiq Khan being able to build 65,000 new homes per year in London, is that possible?
He would need to get more money from government, and I mean, Sadiq Khan, I'm sure he would love to, but he doesn't have the bricks and mortar for 65,000 house in his back garden.
Sure.
He would need to go. Government
To the
needs
central
to
government.
expand borrowing.
But we have a opposite government,
We
so
do.
who may not favour Sadiq Khan building 65,000 homes
So,
every year,
Yeah.
and therefore that option may not be
Yeah.
available.
So Sadiq Khan, I think, has the will. There are lots of really great, particularly Labour councils around London, who are looking at really amazing, innovative ways, and it's actually fantastic. And just to big up the Young Fabians, and actually Adam here, the Young Fabians did a project called Innovation Under Fire, where we went around the UK, spoke to Labour councils, and asked them, what are you doing? The Tories have brought these cuts, what sort of creative things are you doing? And it was really amazing, the things that we just learned around the country. So I don't think we're going to see any huge break in the housing crisis until we get the Tories out of power. But until then, there is Labour in power in councils, mayors up and down the country that are setting themselves really ambitious targets like the 65,000. And why not set that target? Why would you say, oh, the Tories will only let me build 30, so why not aim for 65?
Why set your ambition so high if you know that you cannot deliver? What is the purpose of it?
I don't think it's true that you couldn't deliver.
I think that, so basically the 65,000 is in the London plan, which is currently out for consultation. He has set his target, just to set a more realistic target, he's set up until from now until 2022, he's planning on building, or trying to build, 116,000 socially or affordable rent homes across London. And with that, he's been given 4.8 billion pounds from the government. But when you're trying to build that many homes, those figures sound big and scary and whatever, but actually that's nothing. 4.8 billion pounds, we're talking about a £1 trillion housing market, is a drop in the ocean. It's a misnomer. Because what happens is you've got lots of different parts of the planning. So you've got the national plan, which James Brokenshire is currently looking over as the government lead for housing. He's then set a target for London that you have to deliver this many homes every year. So part of it is Sadiq Khan being told that by James Brokenshire and the Tories, here's a number, you have to reach it. And then when it comes to Tower Hamlets and when it comes to trying to divvy up around London, you have an OAPF and overarching area planning framework, which is where the London plan then decides where these 65,000 homes are going to come from all around London. And what happens then is that's judged on how much land have you got available, and then how much yield in housing units have you produced from that. So this comes to the Isle of Dogs and Tower Hamlets in the sense that it's an incredibly dense, incredibly built up area.
Of course, and there isn't enough infrastructure there, is there?
Indeed. There's currently 11 towers up to 60 stories under construction just near the Canary Wharf estate at this moment in time. And that's not affordable. You know, we've said about 30% affordability. A lot of that is unattainable flats.
It's the high end of the market, isn't it?
Yeah. But what we've seen is housing prices in London start to fall.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Housing prices in London have reached a point where they're unsustainable. Right. So the average house price in London is £475,000 a year. That's 1% lower than it was last year. And that's only going in one direction, especially with Brexit around the corner.
Right. So do you think that the housing prices will eventually come down then?
I believe so, and I think what
if Brexit goes ahead,
I think what they call it in economic terms is a correction.
Correction
in the market. In the market where house prices just get a slight adjustment.
Let's ask Chris that question. Chris, will the housing prices go down in London? Obviously, being an investment manager, you have the upper hand to this, don't you?
I think it's easy to try and seek solace in house prices going down, but the costs don't fall as well. So what you will then see is more projects become unviable, less supply and more volatility as it goes up and down again. Maybe making it more attractive for foreign investors to come in the next time round. So really I think, can those amount of units be delivered? I think it can. I think the last Labour government was achieving 50 to 55,000 in 2010, just before that, and maybe just before the crisis. I think build to rent has a big part to play. Build to rent being professionally managed institutional investors, so this is your pension funds, these kind of guys that want the long term, to plug a gap in the market where historically the private rented sector was, mostly your mum and pop landlords, amateur rogue landlords, but these are new developments that are homogenous, i.e. all in one single ownership and rented out privately, and the planning system does provide that to require affordable as well. I think this is coming in at a time when, as Adam's pointed out, house prices are cooling off in the for sale market. But there's been a large shift in focus towards this build to rent product because of the institutional grade investment. So while the house builders, they're looking at more partnership models. So you have Sage Housing who are looking at partnership models. Well, what's a partnership model? Where these big house builders who have large swathes of land, they might do 30% affordable.
Chris, we need to go
So-
on a short break. We'll continue
Okay.
after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't go anywhere. We need to go on a short break again. We'll be back soon. Thank you.